The Outsiders, Chapter 4, page 62. We crouched in the weeds beside the railroad tracks, listening to the whistle grow louder. The train slowed to a screaming halt. "Now," whispered Johnny. We ran and pulled ourselves into an open box cart. We pressed against the side, trying to hold our breath while we listened to the railroad workers walk up and down the outside. One poked his head inside, and we froze. But he didn't see us, and the boxcar rattled as the train started up. "The first stop will be Windrixville," Johnny said, laying the gun down gingerly. He shook his head. "I don't see why he gave me this. I couldn't shoot anybody." And then, for the first time really, I realized what we were in for. Johnny had killed someone. Quiet, soft-spoken Johnny, who wouldn't hurt a living thing on purpose, had taken a human life. We were really running away, with the police after us for murder and a loaded gun by our side. I wish we'd asked Dally for a pack of cigarettes. I stretched out and used Johnny's legs for a pillow. Curling up, I was thankful for Dally's jacket. It was too big, but it was warm. Not even the rattling of the train could keep me awake. And I went to sleep in a hoodlum's jacket, with a gun lying next to my hand. I was hardly awake when Johnny and I leapt off the train into a meadow. Not until I landed in the dew and got a wet shock did I realize what I was doing. Johnny must have woke me up and told me to jump, but I didn't remember it. We lay in the tall weeds and damp grass, breathing heavily. The dawn was coming. It was lightening the sky in the east, and a ray of gold touched the hills. The clouds were pink, and meadow larks were singing. This is the country, I thought, half asleep. My dreams come true, and I'm in the country. "Blasted pony boy," Johnny was rubbing his legs. "You must have put my legs to sleep. I can't even stand up. I barely got off that train." "I'm sorry. Why didn't you wake me up?" "That's okay. I didn't want to wake you up until I had to." "Now how do we find Jay Mountain?" I asked Johnny. I was still groggy with sleep and wanted to sleep forever, right there in the dew and the dawn. "Go ask for someone. The story won't be in the paper yet. Make like a farm boy taking a walk or something." "I don't look like a farm boy," I said. I suddenly thought of my long hair, combed back, and the slouching stride I used from habit. I looked at Johnny. He didn't look like any farm boy to me. He still reminded me of a lost puppy who had been kicked too often. But the first time I saw him as a stranger, I'd see him. He looked hard and tough because of his black t-shirt and his blue jeans jacket, and because his hair was heavily greased and so long. I saw how his hair curled behind his ears, and I thought, we both need a haircut, maybe some decent clothes. I looked down at my warm, faded blue jeans, my too big shirt, and Dally's worn-out jacket. They'll know we were hoods the minute they see us, I thought. "I'll have to stay here," Johnny said, rubbing his legs. "You go down to the mountain and ask the first person you see where Jay Mountain is." He winced at the pain in his legs. "And then come back. For Pete's sakes, run a comb through your hair and quit slouching down like a thug." So Johnny had noticed too. I pulled a comb from my back pocket and combed my hair carefully. "I guess I look okay now, huh, Johnny?" He was studying me. "You know, you look an awful lot like Soda Pop, the way you've got your hair and everything." I mean, except your eyes are green. They ain't green, they gray, I said, reddening. And I look about as much like Soda as you do. I got to my feet. He's good looking. Shoot, Johnny said with a grin. You are too. I climbed over the barbed wire fence without saying anything else. I could hear Johnny laughing at me, but I didn't care. I went strolling down the red dirt road, hoping my natural color would come back before I met anyone. I wonder what Derry and Soda Pop are doing now, I thought. Soda had the whole bed to himself for once. I bet Derry's sorry he ever hit me. He'll really get worried when he finds out Johnny and I killed that Soch. And then, for a moment, I pictured Soda Pop's face when he heard about it. I wish I was home, I thought absently. I wish I was home and still in bed. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm just dreaming. It was only last night that Dahlia and I had sat down behind those girls at the nightly double. Glory, I thought with a bewildering feeling of being rushed. Things are happening too quick, too fast. I figured I couldn't get into any worse trouble than murder. Johnny and I would be hiding for the rest of our lives, I thought. Nobody but Dahlia would know where we were. And he couldn't tell anyone because he'd get jailed again for giving us that gun. If Johnny got caught, they'd give him the electric chair. If they caught me, I'd be sent to a reformatory. I'd heard about reformatories from Curly Shepherd, and I didn't want to go to one at all. So we'd have to be hermits for the rest of our lives, never see anyone but Dally. Maybe I'd never see Derry or Soda Pop again. Or even Two-Bit or Steve. I was in the country, but I knew I wasn't going to like it as much as I thought I would. There are things worse than being a greaser. I met a sunburned farmer driving a tractor down the road. I waved at him and he stopped. Could you tell me where Jay Mountain is? I asked, as politely as I could. He pointed on down the road. Follow that road down there, the big hill over there. That's it. Taking a walk? Yes, sir. I managed to look sheepish. We're playing Army, and I'm supposed to report to headquarters there. I can lie so easily that it spooks me sometimes. Soda says it comes from reading so much. But then, Two-Bit lies all the time too, and he never opens up a book. Boys will be boys, the farmer said with a grin, and I thought dully that he sounded as corn-pokey as Hank Williams. He went on, and I walked back to where Johnny was waiting. We climbed up the road to the church. Although it was a lot farther away than it looked, the road got steeper with every step. I was feeling kind of drunk. I always do when I get too sleepy, and my legs got heavier and heavier. I guess Johnny was sleepier than I was. He had stayed awake on the train to make sure we got off at the right place. It took us about 45 minutes to get there. We climbed in a black window. It was a small church, real old and spooky and spiderwebby. It gave me the creeps. I'd been in church before. I used to go all the time, even after Mom and Dad were gone. Then one Sunday, I talked Soda into coming with Johnny and me. He didn't want to come unless Steve did, and Two-Bit decided he might as well come too. Dally was sleeping off a hangover and Derry was working. When Johnny and I went, we sat in the back, trying to get something out of the sermon and avoiding the people, because we weren't dressed so sharp most of the time. Nobody seemed to mind, and Johnny and I really liked to go. But that day, well, Soda can't sit still long enough to enjoy a movie, much less sermon. It wasn't long before he and Steve and Two-Bit were throwing paper wads at each other and clowning around. Finally, Steve dropped a hymn book with a bang. Accidentally, of course. Everyone in the place turned around to look at us, and Johnny and I nearly crawled under the pews. And then Two-Bit waved at them. I hadn't been to church since. But this church gave me a kind of creepy feeling. What do you call it? A premonition? I flopped down on the floor and immediately decided not to do any more flopping. That floor was stone and hard. Johnny stretched out beside me, resting his head on his arm. I started to say something to him, but I went to sleep before I could get the words out of my mouth. But Johnny didn't notice. He was asleep too. Chapter 5. I woke up late in the afternoon. For a second, I didn't know where I was. You know how it is when you wake up in a strange place and you wonder where in the world you are? Until memory comes rushing over you like a wave. I half convinced myself that I had dreamed everything that had happened the night before. I'm really home in bed, I thought. It's late, and both Derry and Soda Pop are up. Derry's cooking breakfast, and in a minute, he and Soda will come in and drag me out of bed and wrestle me down and tickle me until I think I'll die if they don't stop. It's me and Soda's turn to do the dishes after we eat, and then we'll all go outside and play football. Johnny and Two-Bit and I will get Derry on our side, since Johnny and I are so small, and Derry's the best player. It'll go like the usual weekend mornings. I tried telling myself that while I lay on the cold rock floor, wrapped up in Dally's jacket, and listening to the wind rushing through the trees, dry leaves outside. Finally, I quit pretending and pushed myself up. I was stiff and sore from sleeping on that hard floor, but I had never slept so soundly. I was still groggy. I pushed off Johnny's jean jacket, which had somehow got thrown across me, and blinked, scratching my head. It was awful quiet, with just the sound of rushing wind in the trees. Suddenly, I realized Johnny wasn't there. "Johnny!" I called loudly. And that old wooden church echoed me. "Ani, Ani, Ani." I looked around wildly, almost panic-stricken, but then caught sight of some crooked little letterings written in the dust on the floor. "Went to get supplies. Be back soon. J.C. Johnny Cade." I sighed and went to the pump to get a drink. The water from it tastes like liquid ice, and it tasted kind of funny, but it was water. I splashed some on my face, and that woke me up pretty quick. I wiped my face off on Johnny's jacket and sat down on the back steps. The hill the church was on dropped off suddenly about 20 feet from the back door, and you could see for miles and miles. It was like sitting on top of the world. When you haven't got anything to do, you remember things in spite of yourself. I could remember every detail of the whole night, but it had the unreal quality of a dream. It seemed much longer than 24 hours since Johnny and I had met Dally at the corner of Pickett and Sutton. Maybe it was. Maybe Johnny had gone a whole week and I had just slept. Maybe he had already been worked over by the fuzz, was waiting to get the electric chair since he wouldn't tell where I was. Maybe Dally had been killed in a car wreck or something, No one would ever know where I was. I'd just die here, alone, and turn into a skeleton. My overactive imagination was running away with me again. Sweat ran down my face and back, and I was trembling. My head swam, and I leaned back and closed my eyes. I guess it was partially delayed shock. Finally, my stomach calmed down, and I relaxed a little bit, hoping that Johnny would remember cigarettes. I was scared sitting there by myself. I heard someone coming up through the dead leaves toward the back of the church, and I ducked inside the door. And then I heard a whistle, long and low, ending in a sudden high note. I knew that whistle well enough. It was used by us in the Shepherd gang for "Who's there?" I returned it carefully. It darted out the door so fast that I fell off the steps and sprawled flat under Johnny's nose. I propped myself up on my elbow and grinned up at him. "Hey, Johnny, fancy meeting you here." He looked down at me over a big package. "I swear, Pony Boy, you're getting to act more like Two-Bit every day." I tried unsuccessfully to cock an eyebrow. "Who is acting?" I rolled over and sprang up, happy that someone was there. "What'd you get?" "Come on inside. Dolly told us to stay inside." We went in. Johnny dusted off the table with his jacket, started taking things out of the sack and lining them up neatly. "I got a week's supply of bologna, 2 loaves of bread, a box of matches," Johnny went on. "I got tired of watching him do it all, so I started digging into the sack myself." "Woo!" I sat down on a dusty chair and stared. "A paperback copy of Gone with the Wind? How'd you know I'd always wanted one?" Johnny reddened. "I remember you saying something about it once." "Me? When you and I went to see that movie, remember? I thought you could maybe read it out loud and help kill some time or something." "Gee, thanks." I put the book down reluctantly. I wanted to start right then. "Peroxide? A deck of cards?" Oh, suddenly I realized something. "Johnny, you ain't thinking of, you know." Johnny sat down and pulled off his knife. "We're gonna cut our hair, and you're gonna bleach yours." He looked at the ground carefully. "We'll have our descriptions in the paper. We can't fit 'em." "Oh no!" My hand flew to my hair. "No, Johnny, no, not my hair. Come on." It was my pride. It was long and silky, just like Soda's, only a little redder. Our hair was tough. We didn't have to use too much grease on it. Our hair labeled us greasers, too. It was our trademark, the one thing we were proud of. Maybe we couldn't have Corvairs and Madras shirts, but we could have our hair. We'd have to anyway if we got caught. You know the first thing the judge does is make you get a haircut. "I don't see why," said sourly. "Dolly could just as easily mug somebody with short hair." "I don't know either," Johnny said. "It's just a way of trying to break us, I guess. They can't really do anything to guys like Curly Shepherd or Tim. They've had about everything done to them already. And they can't take anything away from them because they don't have anything in the first place. So, they cut their hair." I looked at Johnny imploringly. Johnny sighed. I'm gonna cut mine too and wash the grease out. But I can't bleach it. I'm too dark-skinned to look okay blonde. Oh, come on, pony boy. It'll grow back. Okay, said Wide-Eyed. Get it over with. Johnny flipped out the razor's edge of his switch. Took hold of my hair and started sawing on it. Shuddered. Not too short, begged. Johnny, please. Ugh. Finally, it was over with. My hair looked kind of funny, scattered on the floor in tufts. It's lighter than I thought it was, I said, examining it. Can I see what it looked like now? No, Johnny said, slowly staring at me. We gotta bleach it first. After I'd sat in the sun for 15 minutes to dry the bleach, Johnny let me look in the old cracked mirror we found in the closet. I had a double take. My hair was even lighter than Soda Pop's. I'd never combed it to the side like that. It just didn't look like me. It made me look younger. And scareder, too. Boy, howdy, I thought. This really makes me look tough. I look like a blasted pansy. I was miserable. Johnny handed me the knife. Boy, he looked scared too. Cut the front and thin out the rest. I'll comb it back after I wash it. Johnny, you can't wash your hair in that freezing water. In this weather, you'll get a cold. He only shrugged. Go ahead and cut it. I did the best I could. He went ahead and washed it anyway, using the bar of soap he'd bought. I was glad I had to run away with him instead of with Two-Bit or Steve or Dally. That'd be one thing they'd never ever think of. Soap. I gave him Dally's jacket to wrap up in. He sat shivering in the sunlight on the back steps, leaning against the door, combing his hair back. It was the first time I could see that he had eyebrows. He didn't look like Johnny. His forehead was wider where his bangs had been. It would have been funny if we hadn't been so scared. He was shivering with cold now. I guess we're disguised. I leaned back next to him sullenly. I guess so. Oh, shoot, Johnny said with fake cheerfulness. It's just hair. Oh, shoot, nothing, I snapped. It took me a long time to get that hair just the way I wanted it. And besides, this just ain't us. It's like being in a Halloween costume we can't get out of. Well, we're gonna have to just get used to it, Johnny said with finality. We're in big trouble. And it's our looks or us. I started eating a candy bar. I'm still tired, I said. To my surprise, the ground blurred, and I felt tears run down my cheeks. I brushed them off hurriedly. Johnny looked as miserable as I felt. I'm sorry I cut your hair off, pony boy. Oh, it ain't that, I said between bites of chocolate. I mean, all of it. I'm just a little spooky. I really don't know what's the matter. I'm just mixed up. It's no thing. I know, Johnny said through chattering teeth as we went inside. It happened so fast. I put my arm across his shoulder to warm him up. Two-Bit should have been in that little one-horse store. Man, we're in the middle of nowhere. The nearest house is 2 miles away. Things were lying out in the open, just waiting for somebody slick like Two-Bit to come and pick him up. He could have walked out there with half the store. Johnny leaned back beside me, and I could feel him trembling. Good old Two-Bit, he said in a quivering voice. He must have been as homesick as I was. Remember how he was wisecracking last night? I said. Last night. Just last night, we were walking Cherry and Marsha over to Two-Bit's. Just last night, we were lying in the lot, looking up at the stars, and dreaming. Stop it! Johnny gasped from between clenched teeth. Shut up about last night. I killed a kid last night. He could have been over 17 or 18, and I killed him. How'd you like to live with that? He was crying. I held him like Soda had held me the day we found him lying in the lot. I didn't mean to. But they were drowning you, Pony. And I was scared. Sure is a lot of blood in people. He got up suddenly and began pacing back and forth, slapping his pockets. What are we gonna do? I was crying by then too. It was getting dark, and I was cold and lonesome. I closed my eyes, and I leaned my head back. The tears came anyway. This is my fault, Johnny said in a miserable voice. He had stopped crying when I started, bringing a little 13-year-old kid along. You ought to go home. You can't get in any trouble. You didn't kill him. No! I'm 14. I've been 14 for months. And I'm in it as much as you are. Shut up. I'll stop crying here in a minute. I just can't help it. He slumped down beside me. Oh, I didn't mean it like that, Pony. Don't cry, Pony. We'll be okay. Don't cry. I leaned against him and bawled until I went to sleep. I woke up late that night. Johnny was resting against the wall. I was asleep on his shoulder. Johnny? Are you awake? I was warm and sleepy. Yeah, he said quietly. We ain't gonna cry no more, are we? Nope. We'll all cry it out now. We're getting used to the idea. We're gonna be okay now. That's what I thought, I said drowsily. The first time since Dally and I had sat down behind those girls at the nightly double, I relaxed. We could take whatever was coming now. The next 4 or 5 days were the longest days I've ever spent in my life. We killed time by reading Gone with the Wind and playing poker. Johnny sure did like that book, although he didn't know anything about the Civil War, and even less about plantations, and I had to explain a lot of it to him. It amazed me how Johnny could get more meaning out of some of the stuff in there than I could. I was supposed to be the deep one. Johnny had failed a year in school and never made good grades. He couldn't grasp anything that was shoved at him too fast, and I guess his teachers thought he was just plain dumb. But he wasn't. He was just a little slow to get things, and he liked to explore things once he did get them. He was especially stuck on the Southern gentlemen, impressed with their manners and charm. I bet they were cool old guys, he said, his eyes glowing, after I'd read the part about them riding to sure death because they were gallant. They remind me of Dally. Dally? I said, startled. Shoot, he ain't got any more manners than I do. And you saw how he treated those girls the other night. Soda's more like them Southern boys than Dally. Yeah, and the manners bit, and the charm too, I guess. But one night I saw Dally getting picked up by the fuzz, and he kept real cool and calm the whole time. They were getting him good for breaking out the windows in the school building, and it was Two-Bit who did that. And Dally knew it, but he just took the sentence without batting an eye, or even denying it. Man, that's gallant. That was the first time I realized the extent of Johnny's hero worship for Dallas Winston. Of all of us, Dally was the one I liked the least. He didn't have Soda's understanding, or Dash, or Two-Bit's humor, or even Derry's Superman qualities. But I realized that these three appealed to me because they were like the heroes in the novels I read. Dally, he was real. I liked my books and clouds and sunsets. Dally was so real, he scared me. Johnny and I never went to the front of the church. You could see the front from the road, and sometimes farm kids rode their horses by on their way to the store. So we stayed in the very back, usually sitting on the steps and looking across the valley. We could see for miles and miles. See the ribbon of highway and the small dots that were houses and cars. Couldn't watch the sunset since the back faced the east, but I loved to look at the colors of the fields and the soft shades of the horizon. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Johnny and I slept huddled together for warmth. Dally had been right when he said it would be cold where we were going. Being careful not to wake Johnny up, I went to sit on the steps and smoke a cigarette. The dawn was coming then. All the lower valley was covered with mist. Sometimes, little pieces of it broke off and floated away in small clouds. The sky was lighter in the east, and the horizon was a thin golden line. The clouds changed from gray to pink, and the mist was touched with gold. There was a silent moment when everything held its breath. Then the sun rose, and it was beautiful. Golly! Whew. Johnny's voice beside me made me jump. That sure was pretty. Yeah, I sighed, wishing I had some paint to do a picture with while the sight was still fresh in my mind. The mist was what was pretty, Johnny said. All gold and silver? Mm-hmm, said, trying to blow a smoke ring. Too bad it can't stay like that the whole time. Well, nothing gold can stay. I was remembering a poem I'd read once. What? Johnny asked. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so, an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day. Nothing gold can stay. Johnny was staring at me. Where'd you learn that? That's what I meant. Robert Frost wrote it. He meant more with it than I'm getting, though. I was trying to find the meaning the poet had in mind, but it eluded me. I was always remembered it because I never quite got what he meant by it. You know, Johnny said slowly, I never noticed colors of clouds and stuff until you kept reminding me about them. It seems like they were never there before. He thought for a minute. Man, your family sure is funny. And what happens to be so funny about it? I asked stiffly. Johnny looked at me quickly. I didn't mean nothing by it. I mean, well, Sona kind of looks like your mother, but he acts just exactly like your father. And Derry? He's a spitting image of your father. But he ain't wild and laughing all the time like he was. He acts like your mother. And you just kind of don't act like either one. I don't know, I said. Well, thinking it over, you ain't like any other gang either. I mean, I couldn't tell Tubin or Steve or even Derry about the sunrise and clouds and stuff. I couldn't even remember that poem around them. I mean, they just don't dig. Just you and Soda Pop. Maybe Cherry Valance. Johnny shrugged. Yeah, he said with a sigh. I guess we're different. Shoot, I said, blowing a perfect smoke ring. Maybe they are.